Gentlemen, congratulations on the book. I binge read it from cover to cover, just one day. That was it.
Well, thank you.
Not at all. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I want to know about the possible pressure that was on both of you, because, you know, a president and one of the best-selling authors in the world. What was the pressure like to come up with as good a book as you have?
We didn't want to bore people to death with the book. We didn't want to fail.
Yeah, I didn't want to think about it too much, but there was a lot of, I just felt a lot of responsibility to really, really, really deliver. I mean, my notion, my goal was to do the best or one of the best books ever, thrillers about the presidency. That's what I hope to do. So, you know, you set that kind of standard. And what made it possible, and this is what I think separates the book from most thrillers, most novels, is just the authenticity.
Yeah.
I mean, people will read, you know, like James Comey's new book or books about Trump or whatever, because they want to know what it's like. If you really want to know what the American presidency is about, this book will really tell you, because this lays it out in under the worst circumstances. The weekend that this president goes through in the book is extraordinary.
Was there ever a worry, Mr. President, to give away too much?
Give away too much?
Yeah.
No, I was careful about it, actually, but I've been out of office long enough so that I don't have any currently classified information. And yet I still have a lot of, you know, contacts with people who do this work. And so what I wanted people to see about this is that A, it's a serious issue. B, there are consequences that go way beyond the election hacking that affect every single person. And then I want them to say, so, you know, what are you going to do about this? And I wanted to, Jim really, he was hammering me even to be more and more detailed about like the physical things. How's the White House organized? To make sure that we didn't describe anything except as it would have happened. Then the procedures, how would they work out? And then the voice of the president. I wanted the president to be somebody you could imagine being president, who had the background we described, dealing with the crisis that the book deals with.
When you were revisiting,
you know, in a lot of ways, there's more room here to tell the truth than sometimes there are in memoirs. Because memoirs, you have to protect a certain amount of information. We really have to protect information here, so we could lay it out, at least on a theoretical basis, what it would be really like to be the American president. Yeah. That's what you get in this book.
When you revisited it, did it give you a little hankering and thinking, I would like to go back, or do you think, no, that was another time?
No, because I believe in our system, and I was grateful to have a chance to serve 8 years, and I've had a wonderful life since then. Keep in mind, it's been, I have now been out of office twice as long as I was in office, more than twice as long.
So now he gets a chance to do things he wanted to do without Congress getting in the way.
I just tell the story now. But I think, I love my country. I still care very much about that, but my work life is my foundation now, and the other things I do. So, and I show up and try to help when I can, you know, with natural disasters. I went to North Korea once, you may remember.
Yes.
But I really, once in a great while since I've been gone, rarely, once in a great while, some problem will arise that I had particular knowledge of or experience with, and I think, well, I wish I could help with that. But when you leave that job, you have to leave it. I've been really impressed with George W. Bush, how he left and became an accomplished artist, you know. He's really getting better and better and better. And he does his work, and we do a project together. But I think it's really important in our system, if you believe in democracy and rules, then you should embrace the rules as a release. That this country was never, our country was never meant to be the province of lifetime office holders.
In terms of going into the book with the president, what surprised you most of all?
What surprised me most of all was how demanding the job is. And that's one of the hallmarks of the book, which is, you know, for 20 years, whatever, a long time, the American people around the world have been seeing on Saturday Night Live, on House of Cards, on what's the other?
Scandal.
Scandal. Views of the presidency that aren't very realistic, and people start believing that. And I think it's really important that people, especially in this country, realize how unbelievably important that job is, and how we have to be so careful. I'm not being political here, but how careful you can decide that the best thing is a Republican or a Democrat or an independent or whatever, but how careful we should be in terms of who we put in there.
Yeah. I remember Michelle Obama saying when she was leaving, she was looking forward to opening a window. Because that was one thing she hadn't done. What about yourself? What did you look forward to?
I loved being in cars that weren't armored, where I could let the window down in the car. And it's interesting, there I am in New York, supposedly the terror capital of the universe, and I drive around in normal cars. But when I go to other places, they always pick me up in armored cars because they have them there anyway for the current occupants of the office. So I like that. I like being able to go to countries where I didn't spend all my time with men and women all dressed up in official meetings and stuff, and I could go out into the country and see. I'll never forget the first time I went to work on agriculture in Rwanda. We were there working on the AIDS before, but I went out to this place that where we were building a hospital. So I met with the farmers, and I got down and started digging in the soil. And this Rwandan farmer was laughing at me. He barely knew who I was, he was just laughing. And I said, why are you laughing? He said, oh, we have many Westerners who come here and tell us what we should do. You were the only one with sense enough to sample the soil. So I will listen to you. What do you think we should do? And I thought, hallelujah, I'm in the real world. I like
we both come from small towns, lower middle class, I would say, in terms of upbringing. And it's affected us in terms of how we tell stories, what our values are.
You went to my hometown of Glasgow.
I did, yes. I've been there several times.
Yeah.
And I like it very much. I've watched it change over the decades,
Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, again, going back to the book, there's so many great parts, many great plots in it. Interestingly enough, there is a part when the president gets into the car and can't really quite remember how to drive properly, which is interesting too. But also in disguise at one point. Did you ever venture out from the White House in disguise?
No.
No,
but I think, and it's harder than, if you read the book, we tell you just how hard it is and why the Secret Service tries to talk the president out of it, why he does it, and how hard it is for him to do it. But it's you just got to make up your mind when you get that job, your life belongs to the American people.
And the president said, this is irresponsible, but under the circumstances in the book, it becomes a responsible thing to do, and difficult, but basically something that no president should do.
Yeah. Does it feel almost then slightly like an imprisonment in some way? Because you just think, I just want to walk out.
Yeah, I used to joke that no one could tell the difference whether the White House was America's greatest public building or the crown jewel of the federal prison system.
No, it's amazing, just anywhere you go with, or that I've gone with the president, just to have all these people, the Secret Service around. Or we did this one photo shoot thing for Sports Illustrated, and to have these people shooting photographs while we're swinging a golf club, that's not a good idea. I don't really want that.
Also, there's a lovely mention of Hillary at the beginning of the book, because, again, when you read the book and hear what a president goes through, the First Lady goes through it too.
Absolutely. And she was very interested in what we were doing and how we were doing it, because she was a senator from New York on 9/11, and she was on the Armed Services Committee. And she had to decide how we should change our security budget accordingly. And then she was Secretary of State. And one of the arguments we make here implicitly is that we haven't done enough on cybersecurity. 21 years ago, I issued the first executive order to concentrate on cybersecurity, because you could just see what was going to happen. And so we try to deal here with a genuine challenge for America, which if you talk to the average person, they say, oh yeah, they hacked the election, and whether they think it was all right may depend on who they were for in the election. But they need to understand this is the tip of the iceberg. Everything's electronic, you can hack anything. You know,
Yeah. This is the scariest book I've ever been involved with because the threat is real and it's so severe. I mean, the threats that we look at North Korea, whatever, yeah, okay, but this is much more potentially damaging than anything that could happen.
I mean, in theory, you could shut down all the cars on the highway that have been built since 2010.
Yeah.
And
Shut down Wall Street, shut down your bank accounts, make them disappear. It all goes away.
if you get sick in America and your records are in the UK, no records.
I mean, we're terrified at times with the stuff that we read. How terrifying is it for you because you know so much more?
Well, I'm always thinking about what you could do in defense. I mean, being president really is about you're supposed to do what you hired on to do. That is, you said, vote for me and I'll try to do 1, 2, 3. You try to do that. Then you take an oath to preserve, protect, and defend. So that means you have to deal with incoming problems. Nobody asked George W. Bush what he was going to do if the economy collapsed, much less what are you going to do if 9/11 happened. You have to make decisions that you didn't foresee. But the third thing you should be doing always is thinking about what's going to happen next. How can you look around the corner and develop a response to that? For example, if I were president today, I would have really high-level groups looking at artificial intelligence and robotics, because there are a lot of people who believe they will be the first combined technological revolution to kill more jobs than they create. That's your job too. Cybersecurity is really important. You don't want, if you just look at what we lay out, if it took a day to fix it, not much of a problem, right? A couple people might die, maybe 100, maybe 1,000, but it wouldn't be mortal threat to the United States. We're in no way, shape, or form position to do all that today if a maximum attack occurred.
It's interesting in the book, I won't give away any of the plot, but the president is very much alone.
We won't let you give away anything.
It's a red dot on me now.
That's right.
But having Hillary there, and I was thinking actually today with Meghan and Harry now, and of course we just had the royal wedding, and you know Meghan's going into a world that she doesn't know. Obviously with Hillary, you were both that background in politics. How much did that help? Because I'm thinking of the advice maybe even that you would give, a newlywed couple that are not particularly in the same business, but they are now.
Well, I think first of all, you have to learn as quickly as you can. I mean, when I became president, I was the longest serving governor in America. I knew about dealing with legislative bodies. I was used to dealing with people in both parties. I was used to having arguments and remaining friends. I was used to things that a lot of people aren't. But what I knew about foreign policy and national security was derivative. That is, I thought about it a lot, but I didn't have to actually make decisions affecting and shaping it. And I think that's what you need to do. I mean, in any form of human endeavor, I remember I have the best son-in-law in the world, but believe it or not, he and my daughter were friends, close friends. For the time she was 13, he was 15, and they didn't date until 4 years before they got married. So they knew each other. The more you know, the more likely you are to succeed and deal with adversity in the proper way about anything.
Yeah.
I liked the wedding, by the way.
It was lovely, wasn't it?
Oh, I liked it. I liked the way they treated her and her mom, and the whole deal was great.
I want to talk about social media because obviously it wasn't around in your presidency the way that it is now. And of course, people were talking about tweets that we've seen from the current president over the weekend. How would things have been different for you, do you think, with social media?
Got to be quicker. And the trick is how to be quick and still honest and straightforward. I mean, you got for example, I thought it was great when Twitter went from 140 to 280 characters. It may sound like a simple thing, but you can say more to people. To pretend that life is a Snapchat, Twitter world, Or the average time the president gets, I think, with his voice on television is what, 8 seconds now or something? Butterflies have an attention span of 9 seconds. I mean, you got to be quicker without being so simplistic. You're in effect misleading people. You can mislead people and never say anything that's factually untrue.
Yeah.
Just by all the editorial choices you have.
Yeah. Would you have used it as much, do you think, if you'd been in power?
Differently. I think, anything you can do, the president can do a lot to lift people up, for example. I try to do that now with my Twitter account. I try to, somebody else says something I agree with or does something profoundly good, I try to give them a little notoriety they would not otherwise have. But I think, on the other hand, you have to be judicious about it when you're president because you want your words to count.
People like to hear, I always like to hear from the, fireside chats, not that I was around for those, but the idea of that, I think that's reassuring to people. They want to feel that they're in touch. They want to feel that the person in office is thinking about them and their welfare.
Yeah. It's interesting as well from the British perspective in this book as well, the president has very much a background, how we would perceive it as being almost like a proper background. It's this interesting thing, I've been chatting with Dwayne Johnson, talking about running for president, you talk of Oprah for a while, obviously with, President Trump as well, not coming from a political background at all. What do you think that's fine, or do you think it would certainly help if people had more of an experience in the way that in Britain, MPs tend to come from a political background?
Well, I think other things being equal, it's good to have some experience and have a record of having done things. I told somebody once, said, I can't believe you know so much about the economy. I said, yes, I was in a profession, the only profession in America where people are surprised if you know anything about what you're doing. And if you think about it, it's true, right?
Yeah.
They don't expect the president to know anything, and haven't for years. They've been. That I think is a mistake. It matters. It matters if you've made decisions, live with the consequences. It's a good thing to have made some mistakes. I remember once in the 1980s, a really wise man who was in my cabinet said, I can't support that person. We were talking about various candidates, and he said, I think he's a good person with a lot of ability, but he hasn't made enough decisions and he hasn't made enough mistakes. He said, I don't want to vote for anybody that's never made any mistakes. Interesting. Whereas today, your biggest advantage is just to appear and run because you don't have any record.
Yeah, even in my business career, same thing. The ability to have made mistakes, survived them, and I think you just become a better leader.
Yeah.
If you survive them.
That's always the big thing. And also, I love the fact the most important person in the world to you now, granddaughter Charlotte, is that right?
I have a grandson too.
And grandson too as well, so.
Yeah, I told my daughter when she had her first child that she would never hear me say what some grandparents say, that it's even better than being a parent. Being her father was the most important job I ever had. Being president was the second most important. But this grandparent think it's a good gig. I told somebody the other day, I just think, they're 3 and almost 2, and any day now I'm expecting Charlotte to open on Broadway and Aiden to start doing quadratic equations. I just think it's any day now.
That is the future. Just wrapping up here, again, congratulations on this book. How do you view the future for America, for the world? Because we always feel like we're a little bit on tilt at the moment. That's the feeling that I have. What's your take?
Well, I think a lot of this move toward identity-based politics, reaction against people crossing borders at a rapid rate, reaction against increasing diversity of race, religion, and culture. It's just the rapid change in the societies, in cultures, and in the economy where a lot of people feel left out and left behind. And we're in a great sorting period of globalization. So it shouldn't be surprising that there's been a reaction to it. What would be tragic is if the reaction prevails.
I mean, there was a play a while back, Stop the World, I Want to Get Off. And the world has never spun the way it spins. I mean, the change is so rapid, and that makes people uncomfortable. That puts people in a tilt. It's like they don't want things to change that fast. And we just have to get used to it. I think younger people are better at dealing with change. They kind of, it's in their blood. I think it's harder if you're older to deal with the change.
Basically, the job of politics is to create the conditions and give people the tools to succeed, to make the most of their own lives, or if they are hampered in some way beyond their control, to have decent lives. And all this has been up for grabs. And when people are mad enough, their resentment can override reason, anger can override answers. But in the end, separatism is not good in an interdependent world because diverse groups make better decisions. And also because the richer societies get, the lower the birth rate is. So if you want to grow the economy, at least until the full-blown advent of artificial intelligence and robotics, you have to have more bodies, and they have to come from somewhere else. So we're dealing with all these things. If it's just been a reaction and there needs to be a correction, that's a good thing. But if it means we're deciding to go back to tribalism, that's a bad thing. The whole history of humanity is expanding the definition of who us is and shrinking the definition of them. And I hope when people read this book, they'll feel that way too.
And there's a wonderful speech, I won't say where it comes in the book. That speech, did you write it? Was that very much a joint, the speech from the president?
That particular speech was a lot more the president, for sure. Yeah, and it was important to me, especially because this is perceived as a thriller, that people realize this is a President Clinton and Jim Patterson book, not a Jim Patterson book. So and that's what it is, and that's what makes it, I think, special.
But it works because of him. I mean, I would say, I can't tell you how many times I call him and say, I really like this, but it wouldn't work this way. Well, how would it work? What would really happen? So he demanded that I be authentic, and a couple of times I had to go check with people that worked for me and double check to make sure my facts are right about not just physical things in the White House, but procedures, processes. Then, a day later, problem solved, story's more interesting. Or, I'd call him about a character and I'd say, boy, this character really has something. But we haven't developed it. We need to do more with this. I don't want this to be this is not a one-man show. The presidency is not a one-person deal. As you see, it's a team sport, and increasingly it was a global sport. And as you see on the flip side, attacking the United States is not a one-person deal, right? There are a lot of players here, and they all have stories. And he was great at teasing out what the stories should be.
Did it bring back a lot of memories?
It did. I really had to I had to rethink, how did I consume intelligence? When did it start in the morning? Where did I do it? What did I do in this place, that place, and the other place? Things that I just hadn't thought about in years.
And no time for yourself. That's one thing I read from the book. It was, at one point, you may have dinner with your wife, but that was the only time. The rest of the time, it's full on.
Yeah. But I tried, when Chelsea was still home especially, I tried to, even if I had to go back to the Oval Office, and I had another office, which I always went to if I didn't go back there after dinner, because I was always there for dinner. I tried to always be there for dinner. When Chelsea was a little girl and I was a governor, I tried to always get home at night, spend the night so I could take her to school the next day. I mean, you gotta have, if you're gonna have kids, if you have to be gone, they get it. If it's optional, they get that too. And they keep score. They don't hold against you what you have to do. They do notice what you don't have to do. And so, we wanted this person to be a person. He's a father, he's a widower, he misses his wife, he's got friends. I mean, I think, it's easy to forget sometimes that these people are people holding these jobs.
Did you find sometimes that people forgot that about you, that you were just a person?
Yeah, I think sometimes you become a target or an object of real admiration, but you become a two-dimensional cartoon, not a three-dimensional person.
And that's something we try to do in this book in particular, to make sure that the president was, you know, two-dimensional, three-dimensional, that he had flaws, and that the villain, that the assassin was complex.
Yeah, just one point, we did that for the Secret Service too. Because I get mad when they never get any credit for when they do their good job, and if somebody messes up, you know, it's a big story. Otherwise, they look like they're part of the scenery, you know, and their earphones and all that. And all these people are real people, and most of them have families and obligations, and they realize that when they look like they're RoboCops to you, it's because they're concentrating, because they know that it's like playing center field in baseball. Most of the time you don't have much to do, but when you do, you better be ready, and you may have to go a very long way to save the day. And I admire them very much and think they are underapprecited. So we really worked hard to make
That
them
center
people.
field thing isn't going to work here.
Because they're too busy?
No, because it's England.
Oh,
Well, you could be a soccer analogy, a
Yeah, I
football
forgot it.
analogy. That's all right. We knew exactly what you mean.
well, the goalie sometimes can go a whole game and only have to do 2 saves, right?
There we are. Exactly.
Same
It's
deal.
got a same deal. It is. Gentlemen, Mr. President, an absolute pleasure to meet you. James Patterson, thank you so much.
Thank you. That was
And
great.
a brilliant read, pure and simple.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bless
sir.
you.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for reading the book and talking to us.
Thank you.